Hello everyone, and welcome to DAM for the New Age of Great Digital Experience 2021, sponsored by Binder. I'm delighted to welcome our conference chair for the day, Christina Huddard. Thank you, Christina.
Good morning, everyone. It's exciting to be kicking off DAM for the New Age of Great Digital Experience. We have a great lineup of speakers for you today, and I'm so honored to be your chair today. Firstly, I'd like to welcome all of you joining us from around the world today. And of course, thank you to Binder, the sponsor of this event. You're joining us today from North America, good morning, from the UK and mainland Europe, including France, Germany, Netherlands, and Italy. And if anyone's joining from Switzerland, guten Nachmittag, good afternoon. And from further afield from South Africa. And some of you might even be joining us from Australia and India, but I do hope that for you, you're not awake right now because it'll be the middle of the night. So just please watch the recordings afterwards. So we have people joining us today with some fabulous job titles, ranging from DAM manager to senior VP of global marketing operations and creative operations. Love seeing the operational side of things here today. And also director of integrated solutions and capabilities. So love having the technical and digital perspective here today as well. And you're all joining from industry sectors ranging from retail, CPG, financial services, healthcare, cultural heritage, and beyond. Wherever you are joining from and wherever you are in your DAM journey, thank you for joining us today for DAM for the New Age of Great Digital Experience. Now, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping, just so if you're new to this platform. If you do want to find out a little bit more about Binder, please click on the Meet Binder tab at the top of your screen. Also, take a look at the community feed on the right-hand side, I believe, where you can post questions and comments for all attendees, and the lounge where you can participate in real-time networking with industry peers. Now, during the sessions, we encourage you to chat with fellow attendees. We've got a wonderful DAM community joining us today, and I know we're not in person, so please do connect with each other and say hello through the digital platform instead. And throughout the sessions today, which are all live, if you have any questions, please enter your questions using the panel on the right-hand side of your screen, and do chat with each other. I see some of you are already putting some hellos and good mornings and good afternoons into the chat. So keep that up. That's a fun thing for all of us to be joining in on. And if at any point during the event you need any assistance from the Henry Stewart team, please use the chat bot at the bottom right of your screen. Now, for those of you who don't know me, hi, I'm Christina Huddard. I've worked in digital asset management now for almost over 9 years now. And I've been working on the brand side, helping brands of all sizes and in sectors across startups, wellness, financial services, energy, and the cultural heritage sector as well. And I've been helping these brands to select and implement DAM systems, to lead change management and user adoption of DAM and surrounding marketing technologies, and more recently, supporting companies with optimizing their existing DAM operations. I'm also very proud to be teaching a Henry Stewart course, so look out for change management for DAM in 2022. Come and join me for that course. And I'm also on the faculty of the Rutgers University DAM Professional Certificate Program. So for any of the students joining today, hello, good to see you. And for everyone joining, it's great to meet you or to see you again. I do wish we were in person and actually seeing each other, but I think that's coming up next year. And I look forward to being your guide for the day. So today's theme is about DAM for the New Age of Great Digital Experiences. And let's think about what that means a bit more. Digital experiences are the beautiful, glossy, high quality results that we get to see as part of the customer experience. And great digital customer experiences are personal, they're emotional, and ultimately that's what's going to drive us to connect with a brand and hopefully, if all goes well, buy a product or a service from them as well. But what is behind the digital experience? And how are some brands using DAM to get a leg up on their competition by delivering even better personalized digital experiences? I often think about digital experiences like this Wizard of Oz clip. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. So digital experience is a bit like the Wizard of Oz. What you see and experience is powered by all of the things happening behind the scenes. And when you pull the curtain back, you don't want to see just one man pulling levers and cranking wheels. You want to pull that curtain back of a great digital experience and see something like this. You want to see a lot of moving parts, including having the right resources with the right skill set to bring everything together. You want robust standard processes that make it easier and faster to deliver great digital experiences. You want the right technology, of course, including DAM, to feed these digital experiences. And of course, you need accurate data and metadata in the context of digital assets. And if everything is working together well, people are leveraging the right technology and following processes, and the technology streamlines these processes, then you will start to be able to build these incredible digital experiences. And with DAM as the heartbeat of the digital experience, pumping the right content out to the rest of the organization and onto the right digital channels, then you start to see a great digital experience coming together. We can see something similar if we look behind the scenes of the making of a film. Each of these elements needs to work together with the next to make a beautiful end result. So I'll show you an example from the movie Mulan.
To play the legendary warrior Mulan in Disney's live-action film, Liu Yifei spent 3 months training for up to 7 hours a day. This demanding regimen paid off. The film cinematographer, Mandy Walker, told Insider that Yifei was able to execute about 90% of her own stunt work. In preparation for the film's acrobatic fight sequences, Yifei and her castmates were schooled in everything from weapons handling and archery to military marching and horseback riding. The performers did their most dramatic mid-air stunts while attached to wires or beams, so that it looked like their characters were flying or spinning through the air. All in all, the film's action sequences required 90 horses, 80 trick riders, 4,000 prop weapons, 281 sets of armor for the Chinese army, and 730 pieces of armor for the Ruran army.
So these kind of glossy, high quality digital experiences are what we expect to see, but this is the kind of the amount of work that goes into the background to make all of this come together. So on that note, today we're going to pull that curtain back and examine what is behind the digital experience and how DAM is the heartbeat of the digital experience. We've got a great lineup of speakers who will be talking about how to bring together all of these elements to make it work for you. And to kick us off, I'd like to introduce DAM industry strategist, analyst, and author, a fellow American in the UK, and a good friend, Theresa Regli. Over to you, Theresa. Oh, we're just on mute, I think.
Thank you for pointing that out. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining. Hopefully you can see my screen as well. All good? Yeah, okay. I'm sure you'll alert me if it's not. Thank you, Christina. As noted, I'm a fellow American of Christina's here in the UK, so I will say good afternoon. We're at 4 o'clock. As is typical this time of year, the sun is already practically completely down. So it is definitely early evening here. And also thanks to the Henry Stewart team and to Binder for having me today. I'm really thrilled to talk about my experience with DAM powering the customer experience. I'm going to talk about engines, and this door is actually in one of my local pubs where it says the engine room. There's not really any engines in there. It's the taps and the beer. So, but that's it's a general word, right? Engines. It can mean a lot of things, but I'm specifically going to talk about train engines. To give you a little bit of background on me, as Christina did, very similarly, I've also been a DAM consultant for quite a long time, 17 years for me. I originally started my work as basically an implementer in this space. I ran a systems integrator for a long time that did content management and web content management. More recently, my work's been focused on industry analysis. I'm a market expert, so I study the vendors and I recommend and analyze different products to my clients. A lot of my work is data orchestration, and then oftentimes clients, they sort of keep me on board to work on general digital transformation projects with a very intense focus on DAM. So a lot of what I'm doing is figuring out what is the role that DAM plays in the greater ecosystem. In 2016, I wrote a book on DAM called Digital and Marketing Asset Management. The foreword was written by Filippo Catalano, who was the head of digital operations at Nestle at the time. So if you'd like to pick that up, you're more than welcome. And this is just a smattering of some of my clients who actually allow me to use their logos. And I also teach, like Christina. I think a lot of us are trying to give back as much as we can after working in the industry for a long time. So I teach at King's College London, which is a digital media master's program here in the UK. So let's talk about the power of great engines and how they power our lives.
Daniel à la cabine pour la marche 093-02, départ. Départ Daniel, bien reçu.
So surely many of you recognize this train. This is the TGV, also known as the Très Grande Vitesse, which means very fast speed, which I always thought was kind of funny that that's what it's called. And this was when it broke the speed record at the time in 2007. That's when this video was recorded. So at the time it broke the speed record for trains, but it has of course since been eclipsed by other trains, or eclipsed, I should say, by other trains in Japan and China. I remember when I first took the TGV in France some 30 years ago, I was traveling from Paris down to the Alps where I was going to study. And I couldn't believe how fast it was. I couldn't believe that it was going faster than one of the planes that was flying overhead. And it was really quite remarkable. So when we think about trains, they are something that has powered society, have powered our lives. We all have traveled on trains, of course. But back when they were invented, of course, they really transformed society, much like the digital industry has over the last 30 years. Now, steam engines and locomotives were among the first. This is George Stevenson. He and his son invented something called the rocket. Now, the rocket was not actually the first steam locomotive, but it was the first to bring together lots of really interesting innovations. And I'm going to use the word innovations a few times, because when we think about digital asset management powering our customer experiences, a lot of innovation is indeed required. But one of the things I love about innovation and all the reading I've done on innovation is that it's not necessarily something new. It's actually often using something that already exists in a new way. And this is what we have to do with our DAM systems, really, in order to power these great consumer experiences. So Stevenson really built, or I should say the Stevensons, they built on what was already there. They evolved the design. They looked at new ways of doing things. They took technology that had been around for quite a long time, and they made it better, and they used it in an incredibly efficient way. So by doing this, They won something called the Rainhill Trials. They won something else as well shortly after that. And this was the Liverpool and Manchester Railway that was first connected in 1829. And they won the award for the best design and the best, believe it or not, experience of getting from these two places. So again, they were known for speed, reliability, and they hauled the first passengers all around the world. Or I should say at least all around their world, which was the United Kingdom at the time. Now, a few weeks ago, I was amazed and excited when I walked into the National Railway Museum in York, up in the north of England, and the rocket, the original rocket was there. I didn't even know that it was going to be there, but I had been using this example in my presentations for many years of ways to innovate using existing technology. And there was the rocket right in front of me. I thought it was so brilliant to actually see this amazing engine that was built all the way back in the early 1800s. So there it is in the flesh still today. Now, even though they built this incredible engine, and even though they had this incredibly powerful way of pulling people around, there were some complications. As with any new technology, we all have some complications that tend to happen. In this case, the big problem was that all the towns in England were still on solar time. So even though you were building these trains, they did not have a coordinated way to actually set a timetable for the trains. And Bristol, for example, was 10 minutes behind London. Now, you can imagine this is quite difficult if you're trying to do a train timetable. You know, these are things we take for granted today, just like we take our digital experiences sometimes for granted. In this case, the clocks weren't even coordinated. So schedules were a mess, and even the smallest differences in time caused huge problems. Data misalignment caused huge problems, and this caused accidents on the tracks. So here it is, we have this great technology, we have this great invention known as the steam engine, and these trains are ready to take people all over. And what happens? They didn't have the right data standards to keep it together. Doesn't that sound familiar? Well, what happened? They came up with Greenwich Mean Time. You might not know that this is why Greenwich Mean Time exists. Now, I live in Greenwich, so as you can imagine, there's a lot of jokes about time here and keeping time, and we often sort of joke that we here should be able to vote on ending daylight saving time and all these little silly things that we still do with time. But in the case of inventing the train, they took 3 years to actually get it together, to get their act together as far as the data standards and the time standards. Local times were not synced until 1840. Okay, so here was the technology, we had it. It takes time to get to where we need to go in terms of actually engineering the infrastructure to have a more complete user experience. So finally, they had time signals that were being sent out by telegraph. This all happened right here from Greenwich. And they forced, of course, everybody to use the same. And at the time, the Queen also lived here in Greenwich. And that's why we have the old Queen's house. And that's partially why time started here. So this was a standard. It was forced by geography. It was forced by industrial development. It was forced by governance, powerful governance, and a strong symbol at the top. Of course, the Queen, and in this case, the royal astronomers who were keeping track of time. Legislation was not actually introduced until 1880. So it took a while, 40 plus years, really, for it all to come together. Now, there was protests, just like we have in our own enterprises. Some people refused to use a system, some people refused to use a standard, and that's what happened here. Some places refused to just adhere to London time. They didn't want to follow what Greenwich was saying they should do. And if you go to Bristol today, you can still see, in fact, the second minute hand that is on the clock at the train station, because they insisted on keeping their own clock there. Wouldn't you know? Now, when we think about having our engine, we have our engine. Our engine is digital asset management. And when we think about the fact that we have this great engine, we have the capabilities, just like Stevenson did with his train. But what really made it come together was not the technology itself. It was the way the different elements were wrapped around that engine that made all the difference. It was also the standards. It was the governance. It was the communication. Like they had to actually broadcast the time from Greenwich to let everybody know when the trains could leave. So it's all of these things that come together around the engine that really power a great user experience. So this is what I hope you'll all be thinking about today as you listen to the case studies and the speakers. We have a problem, we don't have a deficiency of technology. There are great DAM tools available. The issue is that we're not really laying all the tracks. We're not really putting everything that's required around the engine to really power the most effective user experience possible. So this is how I like to look at the DAM engine at the center, where we think about all the features that we get from a DAM engine. And of course, we put lots of powerful fuel into it, our digital assets, our photos, our graphics, etc. And we are powering the user experience on the web, on social media, all the different channels that we have out there. Think about how do we wrap around this DAM engine in the most optimal way. So here's an example from one of my recent client engagements. So if we think about DAM at the center of an internal user experience, so there's really two user experiences that we need to think about in the DAM world. It's the user experience of the DAM software, but then there's the customer experience that we are trying to create. So this shows a bit of both. In the middle, we have, of course, a DAM system at the core and at the very, dare I say, heart, as Christina pointed out, the heart of what we're trying to build. And around that DAM and around that engine, we need to add and layer and enhance with all kinds of related technology and metadata standards and governance to really make this effective. So typically around a DAM, you're going to have capabilities like campaign planning, like marketing content management, collaboration tools. You're even going to have maybe brand specific portals. And that content and those assets are going to come from lots of different sources. Just like Stevenson's, they innovated, they brought in information, they brought in different types of fuel to power their engines. We're doing the same thing. We're bringing in data, we're bringing in things from agencies, we're bringing in master data, perhaps from our product databases. And then that's all going out to the channels, just as I showed on the last slide. This is sort of pretty much a richer and more elaborate view of that central view of the DAM. So we can take the last slide, that goes right in the gray, and then this is everything we're putting around the engine. We're thinking about where are things coming from, what are the channels that they're going to, and then finally, how do we analyze the performance of that customer experience? And that's another very important piece of what we're trying to do every day, is understand how good are the experiences we're building, what are the analytics around those experiences, and then how do we gain insights? And this becomes iterative, right? We're always trying to improve on the innovations that we're creating. We're always trying to improve on those experiences. One of the things we have to do is really think about a customer and marketer driven data model. We need to think beyond the idea of the old-fashioned hierarchies, the old-fashioned sort of database models, because that is not the way a customer's brain works, is it? Nope. We don't think in terms of hierarchies naturally, except maybe when we go in the grocery store. We kind of know where things are when we're shopping for something. But really, there's these intricate relationships that our businesses have, and also that our minds have when we are experiencing content. And a digital asset has many relationships that are not necessarily hierarchical. An asset might be part of a campaign, but we might actually have many things that are part of a digital asset, for example, if it's a brochure or if it's a catalog. And so that might be the parent in one scenario, whereas a campaign might be a parent and have lots of children underneath it in another scenario. So this is why we're seeing the growth of much more flexible data models. This is why we're seeing much more customer-centric taxonomies being built. This is also why we are ever more focused on what is in the mind of the customer. And do we have the right metadata to support their experience? Not just the findability of assets within our enterprises, but also making sure that we can automate and power those experiences externally. So what happens when we don't exchange and coordinate data well? Well, our engines start to fall apart. I'm going to share just a few examples here. So you might remember before the pandemic, what we all worried about a lot more than viruses was terrorism. And one of the things that I thought was a very interesting story from the mid 2010s, I think this happened in 2015 or 2016, was when there was a terrorist attack on the Christmas market in Berlin. And one of the really big flaws that was exposed as a part of this was the fact that the terrorist who carried out the attack, of course, had already been on some kind of watch list, as terrorists often are, unfortunately, on some kind of watch list before they're caught. It was discovered that, of course, he traveled all over different parts of Europe. And of course, he was never alerted, or the police were never alerted to his presence. And one of the interesting things that was concluded after this particular terrorist attack was that the EU Commission failed in their ability or their sort of obligation to exchange data. And that's because all of the European countries' systems aren't necessarily so good at sharing the data. And one of the, just to quote what the EU Commission reported, the attack in Berlin highlighted the fragmentation of Germany's security and counterterrorism services. Each of Germany's 16 states had its own system, its own police, and its own intelligence service on top of the federal agencies, which is one of the reasons they believe he wasn't caught. And of course, this man, as I mentioned, was known to authorities. So when we think about analytics and information sharing and how we decide to act and how we decide to react, it's completely vital that our enterprise departments and our groups and our teams are not siloed like this. Because if they're siloed, you're going to miss very important things. Bad things might happen, and risks that we shouldn't be taking are constantly being taken. So think about that level of importance when it comes to facilitating data exchange and facilitating good coordination. Another example from social media. So this one is an example from a friend of mine who tragically and extremely sadly lost his wife to breast cancer. And one of the things, of course, he did was put a lot of pictures of her and set up a memorial page to her on Facebook. And at the end of the year that she passed away, Facebook, you know how they sometimes say, well, would you like to see a retrospective of your year and the things that got the most reactions? And of course, this is what he said back to Facebook. He said, you know, nice try. Watch a video of my 2016 in review. It's almost like you haven't been paying attention. Here's a very important word when it comes to building customer experiences and the engine of customer experiences: empathy. We need to think about, just because somebody got a lot of reactions to something on social media, or just because someone did, doesn't mean they want to replay it, doesn't mean they want to see it again. So as we think more and more about using DAM to power digital experiences, we also need to be empathetic to what our customers are feeling. And here you go. Only 1 year ago marked the beginning of the end, thanks to the reminder Facebook. And then here's one of his friends responding, sorry, Dennis, Facebook has no tact. Indeed, not actually understanding the difference between a good memory and a bad one. So as I was exchanging, obviously I asked Dennis for his permission to use this in the presentation. And this is something that I thought was a very interesting comment from him. He said, it's such a mixed blessing to have these reminders, but they seem to be handled in such a tone deaf manner. It's interesting. Facebook knew that Laurie, his wife, was his wife. He went through the process of memorializing her page, and yet they think he still wants to be reminded constantly of her death. So think about it. We need to be ultra sensitive to customer experiences. We need to build a modern digital experience that is empathetic. We need to make sure that as we create and distribute digital assets, that these experiences are very sensitive to our consumers. So it's possible to plant seeds for the optimal customer experience in the early stages. And that is part of what we need to think about our DAM doing. It is part of the roots. It's one of the roots for building and growing great customer experiences. And that needs to be built into our metadata, and our systems need to really be engineered to deliver that. And unfortunately, many different platforms are doing a terrible job of that today. So empathy, this is what our experience platforms are missing. And so this, of course, DAM is an engine, but there's a lot of things that have to go around this. So we think about customer data, we think about Of course, if you're in commerce, we think about the history of how they've interacted with us. Of course, every industry, it's different, right? Every single industry, you have a different sort of things you need to wrap around the engine. But empathy is what is going to sustain, frankly, our technological future. Ironically, we need to use our technology to help us deliver content in more human ways and in more sensitive ways. So let's keep empathy at the forefront. So some examples here, and here's one from Binder, the sponsor today, and one of their customers, which is Art Fund, and Christina and I have both worked with the Art Fund. They're a large art charity here in the UK, and in this case, they have spent a great deal of time, on metadata as part of their efforts, and a lot of it is around preferences and likes and what kind of art do you like and what kinds of museums have you been to, and really being sensitive to the kinds of experiences that people want to have. And of course, during the pandemic, with online museums being so important and experiencing art online being so important, that metadata was never more vital, because it was actually bringing together collections of art that we couldn't experience in person. So that's also very important. We need to think about also, how do we go from one system to multiple channels, and that's also important. So as we think about our building our digital experiences, it's very much about that as well. How do we manage this from a centralized engine at the heart, and we're wrapping different things around it to deploy to whatever sorts of experience or channel or device that we want to or that we need to. So to sort of sum up, DAM as an engine, it's more than the technology, okay? DAM is at the core, but we think about all the things that a DAM does, how it helps us manage workflows, it helps us search, it helps us relate, enrich, secure, transform, transcode. But you also need, that's the sort of the black part is the core engine, but then the items in blue very much around what we need to do as professionals, as digital asset managers, as marketers, as content producers and creators. We need to ensure good governance within our enterprises. We need to build cloud services and manage services and scale and monetize and all these things that have the people element, all the things that are wrapped around the engine. This is how we're going to create and power the new age of a better digital experience. Now, as I think about the word engine, if you didn't know, it comes from the old French word engin, which means ingenious. And this is my favorite train, the Eurostar. And I have to admit that after being stuck on this island for 18 months, the first trip I took was down to France. And as soon as the Eurostar came out of that tunnel and I was back on the continent, I definitely got emotional, as so many of us have if we started to travel again and see the people we love. Now, it's up to us, though, to lay the tracks, right? It's up to us to build the right things around the engine. You need to provide the fuel, the force, and that is the total picture of experience management. We have to remember that persistence and consistency is also what leads to innovation and ingenuity. I also like to think it's what keeps us united, as teams in our enterprises, but also as practitioners. We all realize that the technology is only part of it, right? It's only part of what makes this whole train. So think about that. Think about the right intent and the spirit around the engine, and we will all get to where we need to go. Thank you very much. Bon voyage.
All right. So are we giving out free Eurostar tickets?
There's a sale on. I'm going to Paris next weekend, actually.
There we go. I love it. Thank you so much for that, Theresa. I love that analogy of the DAM being the engine that powers the digital experience. And I think we can all relate to that. One of the things that you were talking about is the concept of connecting DAM to customer experience to drive personalization and also to get metrics back. Now, I remember when I first got into DAM 9 years ago, and we were talking about integrations, and I said to somebody, you know, do we need to integrate the DAM with the CRM somehow to you know, talk to the customer data? And people looked at me funny, like I was from outer space, and they were like, no, why would we need to do that? But I think things have changed a lot.
Yes,
So can you talk
yes.
a little bit more about how DAM can be used to drive personalization?
Yeah, what I see is it's mostly that sort of foundational piece where there's some kind of metadata that we're now adding to our assets that is relevant to the customer experience. The DAM isn't necessarily directly connected to a CRM or a CDP or however you're managing your customer data, but whatever's doing that presentation layer. So it might be a CMS, it might be an app, you know, it might be an e-commerce system. It's probably looking for something that's in the DAM, like a product picture or some kind of exhibition image or something that's coming from the DAM. And that metadata that's married to it is somehow relevant to the customer. So it's multiple technologies coming together. So the logic for that experience isn't in the DAM, it's in your CMS or it's in your app or whatever you've chosen to present that experience. But the metadata needs to somewhere along that enrichment, you know, ecosystem somehow needs to get associated to the asset. So while it's not a direct integration, you need to have that connectivity. And I've even seen now, I don't know, Christina, if you've seen this as well, but sometimes now people are tagging assets with sort of customer segments or demographics, or they have personas and they actually have persona as a field where they want to associate an asset to a particular persona, and that's so it can get used later, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
our person Jane, fake person Jane, is going to love this asset.
Yeah, definitely.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Something else that you talked about are kind of the myriad of things that you need to think about when it comes to powering this engine and making it work. So I mean, I'd like to talk a little bit more about what you've seen where companies have kind of forgotten some of those elements, right? Because I think that technology sticks out to everybody. Okay, let's get a new piece of technology and let's do this right. But there's so many other things that we forget along the way. So maybe what are the kind of top 2 or 3 things that you see companies forgetting to think about?
I think it's one of the things that you specialize in, Christina, which is change management. Whenever someone asks me about change management, that's why I send it to you. I think change management is huge, and the importance of planning. You can't just buy a technology and just, okay, we're installing it, we're putting assets in it, and then expect everybody to use it, expect everybody to understand it, expect everybody to understand how does this affect our goals, why should I use it, all that sort of stuff. So I would say change management is probably the biggest one, you know, and there's of course things related to that like adoption and training and education. I'm constantly hired to work on technology piece because that's my specialty, but I'm always saying, okay, great, you have a 200,000 pound budget for the technology. You should be spending £500,000 or dollars on your people and change management and all those pieces. And fortunately, there's a lot of jobs now for DAM managers. And I am so thrilled that most organizations do hire DAM managers when they're buying a DAM, but oftentimes there's more support required than I think, you know, is that people are willing to kind of admit. And a lot of it does have to do with all the work around maintaining the engine and everything that wraps around it. So I think that's a key part of the problem there. So that was more than 3 things, I guess, but.
There's so many things to think about.
Yes.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Theresa. And thank you for that great kickoff to the conference today.
Yeah.
So up next, please join us for the role of creative content in digital experience with Binder. And please don't forget to check out the community feed and let other attendees know you're online. Thank you so much and see you at the next session.